In a landmark ruling, the Supreme Court today legalized abortions. The majority in cases from Texas and Georgia said that the decision to end a pregnancy during the first 3 months belongs to the woman and her doctor, not the government. Thus,
on January 22, 1973, the Supreme Court ruled on the controversial case of Roe v. Wade. The case was taken to the Supreme Court in hopes to strike down an abortion regulation that prohibited women from undergoing a sterile and safe procedure. The verdict sparked a debate that continues to divide the country on whether a woman's right to terminate her pregnancy outweighs those of a fetus. The justices took a stand against social, political, and medical restrictions on a woman's right to choose. This decision widened the gap between the liberal and conservative factions in the United States, and upholding its initial provisions remains important in the preservation of women's health.
For the 19th century, abortion was regularly practiced and even used as a way to limit the size of families in ancient civilizations. In the United States, there were no legal restrictions on abortions until the early 1800s. Abortion was socially accepted until the last few months of pregnancy, but abortions were not safe or sterile. The advancement of medical technology allowed doctors to notice the dangers of these procedures, including the use of poison to abort a fetus in unsterile environments. It was to deal with these issues that the first laws restricting abortion were passed in Connecticut in 1821, which forbade giving pregnant women poison to terminate a pregnancy. Throughout the 1800s, laws were created that restricted doctors from performing abortions. While the main motivation for this may have been protecting a woman's health when the laws were written, over time this became more questionable. Whether it's because they were victims of rape or the pregnancy was detrimental to their health, women still wanted abortions. This led to an increase in back alley and self-induced abortions, which were incredibly dangerous. Prior to the decision of Roe v. Wade, it's estimated that 5,000 women died each year due to botched abortions. So in an ironic turn of events, the laws put in place initially to protect women ended up being the cause of many dangerous procedures. Religion became a key part of sustaining these laws, as Catholics believed that human life should be protected and valued from the moment of conception.
In Texas, the law prohibited medical professionals from performing an abortion. The law punished doctors and women. Sarah Weddington, a young law student who had her own experience with abortion, was seeking change in Texas. Many desperate women approached Weddington about representing them at a federal court to help them protest current abortion laws. She felt the obligation to help them have a safe experience. Sarah Weddington and fellow law student Linda Coffey created a case to challenge the Texas law. Norma McCorvey, known as Jane Roe, agreed to be the plaintiff for the case. Single, broke, and pregnant with her third child, McCorvey was referred to 2 lawyers after seeking an illegal abortion. The case was argued on May 22, 1970. Weddington and Coffey, representing all women seeking an abortion, challenged John Toll, representing the state of Texas. Weddington stated that Texas law should focus more on a woman's right to privacy than a fetus's hypothetical right to life. Toll countered that the state should be concerned with protecting life in whatever stage it may be in. The court came to its decision that states, the plaintiffs argue that the Texas abortion laws must be declared unconstitutional because they deprive women of their right, secured by the Ninth Amendment, to choose whether or not to have a child. We agree. Although the decision was a step in the right direction, it did not change the Texas restriction on abortion. The case was then taken to the Supreme Court.
Roe v. Wade was heard by the Supreme Court on December 13, 1971. Protesters for pro-life and pro-choice stood outside of the court. Sarah Weddington, giving background on the case, states,
"It disrupts her body, it disrupts her education, it disrupts her employment. To the woman involved, she should be allowed to make the choice as to whether to continue or to terminate her pregnancy."
Weddington began the case by reminding the justices that a woman's right to an abortion was secured by the Constitution. She also pointed out that the fetus did not have rights. Lloyd, representing the state of Texas, countered by saying that Roe's case was no longer relevant because Norma McCorvey wasn't pregnant anymore. Lloyd argued that the protection of a fetus is a moral obligation. The justices met to discuss and vote, and 5 out of 7 of the justices were in favor of Roe. Justice Henry Blackmun was assigned to write a majority opinion, which is an official explanation of their reasoning behind the decision. As a conservative individual, he based the opinion off of medical information. Chief Justice Burger believed that the Supreme Court would need to hear Roe v. Wade again. This second hearing was held on October 11, 1972. Weddington posed the question of whether the hypothetical rights of the fetus outweighed a woman's. Robert Flowers replaced Lloyd and stated that life begins at conception. The court was in favor of Roe once again. Justice Blackmun drafted a new opinion that divided the pregnancy into trimesters. It stated that in the first 3 months, any woman in any state could legally obtain an abortion, but states could create restrictions for the second and third.
Computers can be deleted, but the hard drive of heaven, my friends, it cannot be erased. God will judge you. God will avenge the death of these innocent children.
The decision caused an uproar in the Catholic and pro-life community. They viewed the verdict as inhumane and horrific. It also declared abortion laws in 31 states unconstitutional, and 15 other states were forced to rewrite their abortion restrictions. Those who opposed abortion recruited members from the Catholic and Christian community to lobby state legislature to create and pass new limitations. Pro-life supporters strictly voted for politicians who had conservative views. With Ronald Reagan in office, the pro-life movement was becoming increasingly aggressive. Many potential laws challenged Roe v. Wade, such as the Human Life Statute. It defined a fetus as a human being, therefore giving it constitutional rights. From 1977 to 1990, over 100 abortion clinics were bombed or set fire to as a form of protest. One major opposer to Roe v. Wade was the aggressive group Operation Rescue. They prevented women from entering abortion clinics by forming a human wall.
Roe v. Wade polarized America on the topic of abortion, and it continues to divide the country to this day. The passion of pro-life and pro-choice supporters continues to be demonstrated through violent protests, and the decision continues to contribute to single-issue voting. Many individuals refuse to support a candidate if they support a woman's right to choice, even if they agree with the politician's view on other important issues such as healthcare or education. Organizations such as Right to Life Michigan that support single-issue voting have allowed for ignorant and unqualified politicians to be elected. Roe v. Wade converted abortions from being unsterile, unsafe, and unaffordable to an accessible procedure performed under safe conditions. It led to a decrease in botched abortions and maternal deaths. Abortion-related deaths per million decreased from nearly 40 in 1970 to 8 in 1976. Roe v. Wade also encouraged research on how to make abortions even safer and lower the mortality rate. This led to the multiple medical advancements post-Roe v. Wade and the furthered education of physicians who performed abortions. In addition to this, in 2000, the U.S. government approved a pill that aborts the fetus without an actual surgery. This pill made it easier for women to obtain abortions early in their pregnancy, which allows abortion to be less invasive. In addition to this, many decisions regarding the protection of women's health were made post-Roe v. Wade, such as Collaudy v. Franklin, which was decided in 1979. The verdict stated that doctors should make the decision on whether a fetus is viable or not. This protected women from uneducated courts deciding on whether they can obtain an abortion. Another issue had been that many women still did not have access to an affordable hospital. Akron v. Akron Center for Reproductive Health in 1983 allowed for abortions to be performed in clinics, which made access easier. Despite these advancements, many cases continue to challenge Roe v. Wade and chip away at its original holdings. Cases such as Rust v. Sullivan upheld a regulation which prohibits Title X funding from going to family planning programs, which provide counseling for abortion or provide abortion services. This made funding for abortion more difficult. The Supreme Court also upheld the Hyde Amendment, which restricts Medicaid for abortion services. Because not all cases are covered by Medicaid, it makes abortion access disproportionately challenging for lower-income women. One of the largest cases that played a role in chipping away at Roe v. Wade is Planned Parenthood v. Casey. With the ruling of this case, it was stated that state laws could not place undue burden on a woman seeking an abortion. This left a lot of room for restrictions. These cases made abortion access far more challenging for women across the country, taking away from the original holdings of Roe v. Wade, which provide women the right to choose.
Roe v. Wade was a ruling that had a massive impact. It widened the gap between the liberal and conservative parts of the country and helped to preserve women's health. Roe v. Wade was a main catalyst for women's health advancements and laws and continues to be a growing dispute between pro-life and pro-choice activists in the United States.